For those who are not already aware, longtime friend of this channel and longtime discussion and debate partner on this channel, Sameoldji has returned to YouTube. So that's pretty cool. An unusual occurrence happened this weekend in which the self-named Saturday alternators, the group that I play alternating games with on Saturdays. We found ourselves in a position where we didn't have a game prepared and we couldn't play any of our regular games that we switch between because we weren't all going to be present. And so we decided to do a discussion instead. This wasn't a groundbreaking discussion. This wasn't, covering points of discussion that had never been covered before, but it's a juicy topic that we picked, and one that has relevance to a variety of different games and game types and groups and group types. And so, hot on the heels of his return to YouTube, Sameoldji has prepared a response for us, at the end of which he asks a question. And it's to that question that this video is aimed as a video response, just like the old days. So here's the question.
This is a creative outlet. Why do we need to circumvent the imagination of the people around the table and not allowing them to be able to portray what they want to portray? In order to stay true to genre and tone, or to make sure that they make sense. I find that really fascinating, really interesting. I do it. I'm not against or anything. It's not my posture here. I would tend to. I like when we stick to tone, and I like when the aesthetic is clearly established in social contracts. So, don't see me as I'm against that or what. I'm just asking the question. I just want to know. I'm kind of curious about that. I'm curious about, because it doesn't have to be rational. We're playing a game. Sometimes it's fantasy. It can be. Some people call it art. Why do we bring reason in that? Why do we bring stuff like meaning and coherence and making sense?
All right. Now, the discussion that we had that prompted his question was about prompts, role-playing prompts. And this was divided into two types of prompts, either a prompt from the system itself. There's some mechanism in the system which tells you that the decision that you're going to make about your character will need to be made with certain details in mind, such as wound penalty from an injury, such as an emotional state, such as the requirement to adhere to a social law or dictate. And we were using Pendragon as our primary example, so that all of our interactions could be smooth and efficient. We keep drawing from the same game. Now, other games did get referenced, such as a Powered by the Apocalypse game called The Veil, which for its, let's say, attributes, it labels them all as emotions. We use those as a relevant example looking back at Pendragon. And we drew on pretty much any game that gives you like a nature and demeanor type of structure, like you find in World of Darkness games or in Ubiquity games and that sort of stuff. So it's a variety of games that got mentioned, but mostly we talked about Pendragon, and mostly we talked about how Pendragon provides you with prompts to action or away from action, and it provides you with passions which govern other types of situations, such as there's loyalties to various types of characters, like loyalty to the king, And there are hatreds and loves, love of your wife or your family, and hatred of, whatever country is opposed to you. So like hatred of the Saxons and that sort of stuff. And these provide context and constraint, limitation, support, description, reason, motivation, demotivation for the behavior of the character. And there are other games that operate in the exact same setting that operate without any of these mechanical aids. You would simply decide how your character is feeling. And we might consider this to be the normal state of role play. It's kind of the exception that a system provides personality mechanisms, things that tell you how your character is thinking or feeling or what they're motivated to do in a particular moment. It's a common question for people to wonder, why would that be necessary? Or it's fairly common for people to give knee-jerk resistance to it. We don't need that. We can just decide. Some people just fear change. Anyway, we discussed a variety of things. Now, one thing that Sameoldji noticed in his observation of our discussion was he felt that it was primarily about the notion of coherence or genre fidelity or maintaining a particular tone or atmosphere, being true to a particular IP. And it really wasn't. It really was focused on the system prompting you toward behavior or the player choosing a particular behavior. It was about that difference and how that can feel and what can that be like. Now, one thing I do agree with is that the entire conversation was rooted on the notion of genre fidelity as a given because of the examples that we were using and because of the context of use it, embrace it, accept it, right? Accept these mechanics and go with them in order to get the actual experience of that game, right? Or play something else. So it really wasn't up for discussion or debate. It wasn't actually being examined, the notion of genre fidelity or what he described as coherence. But as you've just heard, his question is very much about coherence. What is it that makes sense, that makes making sense the default or the standard in this activity, in which we can imagine anything? And as my response, I feel that he has already answered the question. He's gone on to provide some justifications, which you can see in his video, which I'll link below in the description box and up above in a card and at the end of the video in links there. But it really comes down, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who watches this channel for me to say, it comes down to preference. He himself expressed a preference for, let's call it coherence. I certainly prefer coherence, but this doesn't necessarily mean adherence to a particular genre. So if we look at some games, there are some games that are toolkits for play. We can look at like absolute toolkits like GURPS or EBA or BRP or D&D. Things that by themselves, just as the rule books, just as the rules, do not precisely place you anywhere. Right. Now, there are setting and genre implications in whichever iterations of BRP you're reading. There are genre and setting implications in whichever D&D you're reading. And likewise, depending on your road into GURPS or your road into EBA, you might feel the same, that the game was maybe initially designed to do a particular thing and it still carries some of that DNA in it. But if we look at the notion of the fantasy toolkit or the science fiction toolkit, and you can take bits and pieces to build your own setting, and you do that without any kind of emulation of an existing property, and you're playing, in a sense, to discover where you are. You might not end up with play that is people doing anything and whatever they want. They will still tend toward, they'll still follow this preference toward understandable behavior, or they will still tend to make sense. Unless it is their goal to embrace absurdity, to explore things that don't make sense, to be nonsensical. And there are games out there which have that as their intention, right? To one degree or another. But most games tend to require, let's say, two skills. There's the ability to turn your preparation into perspective and action, and there's your ability to turn preparation into improvisation. So we have our setting, we have our NPCs and the things that the NPCs are in motion doing, and we have our characters and their design and their goals and intentions and the things that they're in motion doing, and we have their interactions, and we have the moderation of the setting that we're in, and all of these things work together to produce a certain amount of sense, and it only makes sense to react to those things in a certain way. When we are improvising, when we're having to decide what to do because of a stimuli, it is difficult as the person, and it's difficult as the people that are playing with you to simply go off. There's a reason why improvisation works the way that it does. If a crazed gunman in a bank, trying to escape from a bank robbery is running at you, yelling at you, threatening to shoot you with that gun, according to the rules of improvisation, we will want to deal with that situation. If we reject sense, if we reject the tone of that particular scene, if we reject the logic of that particular scene, then we may end up doing anything at all. And that could be incredible and awesome fun. For example, someone might describe that their character breaks apart into multicolored bubbles and drifts out the window. In a sense, they are responding to the threat of the gunman, but they aren't responding in any way that anyone else at the table could be prepared for, unless they were prepared for the environment to be absurd or incoherent, or perhaps acoherent. So this is the idea. Where does this come from? It's simply related to the nature of the activity, right? The way that the activity takes place, I feel, dictates the customs, the culture of that behavior. And because we're talking to each other, we tend to want to make sense. If I say, "Hi, how are you?" and you answer, "Bologna sandwich," that could have some kind of personal context or reference between the two of us, where I recognize that you're in desperate need of a bologna sandwich, and without it, you will die. And so I understand that you're not well. And that was an answer to my question. But without that specific context, in other words, without something that makes that make sense, this absurd response invites what from me? Another absurd response. And eventually we wind up saying things that have zero as their value, right? So you make statement A and I make statement 47, and we have no way to understand how they go together. And they don't go together, and we don't even know if play has broken down. It becomes more of a prospect of endurance than interaction. And I think, and I would put forward that as the reason why we don't tend to see a lot of focus on incoherent play. It's just too hard. So that's my opening thoughts on the question of why do things make sense as a preference in role play. And I'm looking forward to the thoughts of others as they take on this question. Why do we do it this way so often? Why are there so few games which embrace this more artistic and more challenging notion of play? Anyway, thanks for the question. Thanks for returning to YouTube, and I look forward to more interactions and more debates.